Okay, so this is pre-grading, and there's a lot of things that you want to do before you submit a card. I would definitely recommend pre-grading as a crucial step to sending a card in. And the reason why I say this is because you don't want to be sending in cards, well, modern cards, that are going to receive anything lower than a 10. Because if you do receive that, you're probably losing money. So you want to be smart on what you're sending in. You want to do a proper pre-grade. So this is just going to kind of inform you guys on how you can do a proper pre-grade and what you guys should be looking for. So this is a Regidrago. I picked this card specifically because I think it's a really good card to submit. Not really based on the value of things, but we'll get into that later. But it's a great card in terms of centering, the edges, the corners, and the surface. And I'll get into that in just a sec. So when you are looking to submit a card and you're looking to pre-grade, first thing you want to do is check out the surface, because the surface is huge. If there is any issues with the surface, whether there's a nick, a dimple, or something that's going on within the surface, that will dramatically take down the grade of the card. And in this case, from what I can tell, and I think what you guys can tell, is that the surface is perfect. Make sure that you have a proper light coming down so that you can properly analyze the surface and know, well, this looks good. I don't see any scratches. I don't see any dimples. It looks as clean as could be. And this card does actually look beautiful. And I love the Lugia on the back here. So the next thing you want to look at is centering. And when you're looking at centering, this is probably the simplest thing to do, because you can just look at this from afar and say, okay, this is what it needs. And from what I can tell, this Regidrago is centered near perfect. This is probably the best centering you will see on modern cards. I would say this is slightly left heavy. So left heavy meaning the left is a little thicker than the right, but I mean, it's barely anything. So I totally think that the centering is perfect, and this would get a 10 on centering without a doubt, unless it's Beckett. Beckett might give it a 9.5. But it's really good centering. You also want to check the centering on the back just to make sure. And again, it looks like this is slightly left heavy on the back, but you know, not a big deal. The back doesn't matter as much. It's 75-25 for most grading companies. So as long as the back doesn't look like really off, you're fine. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the corners and edges are all looking clean, aka there's no white or specks. So when you're looking at the corners and edges, just make sure that you don't see anything kind of whitening in the front. It's usually pretty hard to tell. That's why I like to look at the back of cards when I'm trying to understand the corners and edges. And this one looks pretty much as clean as could be. However, some cards don't look that way. V-Star doesn't look as clean, and I'll show you what's wrong with it. See this whitening on the top here? That's what you want to avoid. Now, is this significant enough whitening to have a problem with? Probably not. You might still be able to get a 10, but you want to avoid the whitening. And most modern cards are going to have some type of whitening on the edges. You got to make the judgment call of whether or not it's bad enough to say, okay, I want to grade this card, or I don't want to grade this card based off of that. So, you know, this might still be able to get a 10, but it's going to be tough. And I think I saw something else on this card that made me not want to grade it. So, yeah, but that is the pre-grading process. Oh yes, and one more thing I need to include here is print lines on the surface. I forgot to include it on the initial one, mostly because the Regidrago didn't really have one. But this Starly has a pretty clear one that you can see. and it goes right down here. And it's really common in the early illustration rares for Scarlet and Violet. So if you're looking at Scarlet and Violet base set, Paradox Rift, and Paldea Evolved illustration rares, just make sure you're really keeping a lookout on the print lines. Oh, there's another one right there. You can see it right there. Another one right there. So these print lines will negatively affect the grade of the card. I will say it's not make or break. I've seen cards have print lines and still get 10s. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and this one has multiple print lines, so it's probably not going to get a 10. I want to send this one in anyways because I personally really like this Starly card, and I just want it. I just want it in a slab, but just make sure you keep an eye out for them because it will negatively affect the grade. And being smart about what you're sending in and making sure that you're sending in grades or cards that are only going to 10 is pretty important because you don't want to be losing value. So the next step of this process is we got to start assessing the value of the cards that we have and seeing if there's actually value to grading the card. And so if you look here, the Regidrago is selling for about $16 raw. So keep that in mind that even if it does get a PSA 10, you're only looking at about $53. However, if you do get a CGC 10 pristine, you're looking at about $100. So you really only want to send this card in if it's like super pristine, super perfect, and you know it's going to get a good grade. And I would not send it to PSA in this case because you kind of want that pristine 10 or the black label for it to make sense. Now, a case in which you would want to send a grade or send a card to PSA is this Groudon, for example. So this Groudon, you know, if it looks pretty clean, it looks good, and you think it has a shot at a 10, then yes, I would send this into PSA because you're looking at a $70 card to go up to a $300 card, which is a massive impact, and you want to take that shot if you think it's valuable. Now, if it's like super pristine and perfect, then you maybe want to send it to BGS to try to get that black label, which none exists, so probably wouldn't happen. But yeah, that's your case. So the next step of this process is to decide what grading company you want to send to. And this can be somewhat of a complicated process, and it's very dependent on the card that you want to send. The card that I'm showing right now is the Brilliant Star Charizard, and if you were to send this into PSA, your expected value back would be a 322. And this is just in a case of which, based off of the pop reports that we're seeing and taking the values of the certain grade that you might get, the expected value is so. And so I do this for multiple cards, and PSA was the highest value there with the Brilliant Star Charizard, but CGC is actually the highest value here with Ethan's Typhlosion. And hold on, I'm trying to find one more. That's not it. That's not it. Here it is. This is where the BGS is actually the highest. And I believe this would be, the Leafeon V-Star from Crown Zenith. The BGS actually has the highest value. So it's very dependent on the card to know which grading company is best to go with. But one thing I would keep in mind is that there's a simple thing that goes with each one of these. PSA is the standard. And if you think it's going to PSA 10, but it's no better than a PSA 10, then send it in to PSA. Get your PSA 10. It's always a safe bet. It's probably going to bring the most value most of the time. But, however, if you are really unsure about it, then I would send it to CGC because it's the cheapest option. You can do a bulk submission with CGC for about $12 a card, where PSA is charging about $19 a card. So I would send to CGC if you were unsure what type of grade you're going to get, CGC is generally the cheapest option. However, you could also send to CGC if a card is like close to pristine perfect and you're trying to get that gold label, because the gold label is going to be worth more than a PSA 10. And then finally, for Beckett, you really only want to send your pristine cards to Beckett. If the card is just perfect, centering is perfect, surface is perfect, corners and edges is perfect, then send that off to Beckett. Get that black label, because the black label is always worth so much money. So there you have it. That's grading in a nutshell, and I just wanted to show you guys some of my graded cards that I submitted and got 10s on. So, you know, I wish you guys the best of luck with your grading submissions, and let me know if this video helped you at all, or if you guys disagree with something that I was saying on the video. I would love to learn. So, best of luck. Hope this helps. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.